Hello, good morning. Thank you, Misha. Esteemed colleagues, I would first like to greet you all. Where's camera? I have to say that it's really a pleasure to be in Dubrovnik, and it's really a pleasure to be part of this course. I'm a little bit sad not to see you all here in Dubrovnik. As you know, this session is dedicated to autonomous ships. So in the same spirit, my presentation will be in the subject of achievements in the adjustment of international as well as national legal regulation to the usage of autonomous ships. I have to say that the purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate the scope of international as well as national legal regulations considering the use of autonomous ships. So I will try to give you an answer and to explain what has been done so far towards the goal of ensuring unlimited use of autonomous ships. This presentation will include following titles. First of all, in introduction, I will point out some key facts about autonomous ships and autonomous shipping. And then I will provide an overview of the results of two research projects, which are considered to be the largest carriers of the development of autonomous ships. Then the next title will be dedicated to international legal regulation, where I will follow IMO steps on autonomous ships, and we will also see the list of instruments to be covered in IMO's regulatory scoping exercise for autonomous ships, and we will also see a list of other international conventions to be taken into account for the purpose of usage of autonomous ships. And at the end, we will see some examples of national legal regulations and some recent changes in national legislation for autonomous shipping in some maritime countries. And at the end, in the summary, I will summarize the above. So not long time ago, actually in 2016, President of Rolls-Royce Marine Division, Mr. Michael McCann, said that autonomous shipping is the future of maritime industry. I have to say that that future already started and that future is happening. Michael McCann also compared smartphone with a smart ship, and he said that just like a smartphone and a smart ship will revolutionize the landscape of ship design and operations. So we already have and we already saw some unmanned vehicles in different transport sectors. So after unmanned aerial vehicles in air transport sector, or after driverless cars with the drivers just in case, definitely it's turned on maritime transport to raise the degree of autonomy. So in the last few years, autonomous ships are attracting attention with the global maritime industry. I have to say that there are already some autonomous ships in operation, and they are being trailed in some sea areas. Most predictions are that autonomous operation will be limited to short voyages from one specific port to another across short distance. But at the moment, we are still waiting for the first commercial transport across the ocean. On the other hand, regulations, international or national, need to be regulated to allow the use of autonomous ships. And in the last few years, more and more companies, governments, organizations, first of all, IMO, are considering possible changes in legal framework.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would everybody please be so kind to switch off your microphone or mute, because then it becomes difficult for the speaker to talk if somebody's talking in the background. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much, Misha. As I said, on the other hand, regulations need to be regulated to allow the use of autonomous ships. So in the last few years, more and more companies, governments, organizations, first of all, are considering possible changes in the framework to adopt autonomous systems. I must point out that the largest areas of the beginning of autonomous ships development are two research projects. That's why I will provide an overview of the results of same projects. So what caused attention?
Pero, please put your microphone on mute. Petar Kragic. Thank you.
So what caused attention when it comes to the topic of autonomous ships are certainly these two research projects. First one is MUNIN, that is short for Maritime Unmanned Navigation through Intelligence in Networks. And second one is AAWA, or what is short for Advanced Autonomous Waterborne Application Initiatives. So this first project is a collaborative research project co-funded by the European Commission, and the aim of this project was to develop a concept for an autonomous unmanned ship, which is defined as a vessel primarily guided by onboard decision systems, but controlled by a remote controller in a shoreside control station. The use case investigated in this project was a dry bulk carrier operating in intercontinental trunk trades. Second project is led by Rolls-Royce, and the aim of this project was to produce the specification and preliminary designs for next generation of ship solutions. This project brings together members from different backgrounds. As you can notice, there are universities, then ship designers and so on, to explore the economic, social, legal, and technological factors which needs to be addressed to make autonomous ships a reality. Both of these projects have been identified that the advantages of autonomous ships are plentifully. So here are some examples of advantages of same projects, autonomous ships. So first of all, they eliminate human error. Then they reduce crewing costs, then they increase safety of life, and also they allow for more efficient use of space in ship design and efficient use of fuel. Autonomous ships have potential to reduce human error, but I have to say that at the same time, and we cannot forget that, they may modify some existing risks as well as create new types of the risks. In final brochure of this project, in the subject of legal framework, we can also see in some final results of same projects. So according to MUNIN final brochure, there is no reason to think that a legal framework cannot be adopted to allow autonomous vessel in maritime transport, or according to AAWA brochure, for autonomous shipping to become reality, we need efforts at all regulatory levels. It means, and on international as well as on national regulatory level. So when it comes to international legal regulation, of course, international debates on autonomous ships has reached main regulatory body for shipping. It means International Maritime Organization. The work of IMO is especially important for the international legal regulation for use of autonomous ships. Even more, IMO's strategic plan from 2018 to 2023 has a key strategic direction to integrate new and advancing technologies in regulatory framework. This means, and this involves, balancing the benefits from new technologies against safety, security, then impact on environmental, and so on and so on. So if we follow IMO steps on autonomous ships, then we can notice that starting point for IMO was the decision taken by IMO in 2017 to carry out regulatory scoping exercise of challenges linked to the introduction of maritime autonomous surface ships. So IMO used term maritime autonomous surface ships. That's general term for this new generation of ships. Plus, with this term, IMO wants to emphasize, first of all, that these are surface vessels. Also, from regulatory point of view, initial work by IMO of regulatory scoping exercise is underway within Maritime Safety Committee. So Maritime Safety Committee has established working group and also correspondent group on its session, and they immediately recognized that IMO should take proactive and leading role in this subject area. Plus, IMO's legal committee is carrying out a gap analysis in relation to liability and compensation for autonomous ship operation under existing conventions, IMO conventions. And of course, IMO's facilitation committee is also included in regulatory scoping exercise on their agenda for conventions which are under this committee. The IMO regulatory scoping exercise as work in progress includes preliminary definition of maritime autonomous surface ships, then degrees of autonomy and methodology for conducting the exercise or plan for work. So for the purpose of regulatory scoping exercise, maritime autonomous surface ships are defined as a ship which to a varying degree can operate independently of human interaction. From this position, we can also add that the final definition of these ships need to be established as a part of future regulatory framework for maritime autonomous surface ships or for this new generation of ships. Also, according to IMO, there are 4 different levels of autonomy. So, maritime autonomous surface ships could be operating at 1 or even more degrees of autonomy for duration 1 single voyage. It means that autonomy levels can change or may change during 1 single voyage. So the first level of autonomy is ship with automated processes and decision support. In this case, seafarers are on board to operate and control shipboard systems, and in this case, some operation may be automated. Second level of autonomy is remotely controlled ship with seafarers on board, and in this case, the ship is controlled and operated from another location, but seafarers are on board. Next level of autonomy is remotely controlled ship without seafarers on board, and in this case, the ship is controlled and operated from another location, but there are no seafarers on board. And the last level of autonomy is fully autonomous ships, or ship, in this case, the operating system of the ship is able to make decisions and determine actions by itself. I must point out here that the legal questions, and let's just call it challenges, links to autonomous shipping as well as solutions needed to resolve them will differ depending on what choices are made in relation to autonomy level. It means it depends on manning, crew location, technological factors, and so on. When it comes to methodology for regulatory scoping exercise, then I must point out that for each instrument related to safety, security, liability, compensation, and also for each degree of autonomy, provisions will be identified. First of all, which apply to autonomous ships and prevent autonomous ships operation, or maybe apply to autonomous ships and do not prevent autonomous ships operation and require no actions, or provisions will be identified with which apply to autonomous ships and do not prevent autonomous ships operation, but may need to be amended or maybe clarify, or maybe may contain some gaps, or have no applications to autonomous ships operations. So the most important part of regulatory scoping exercise is to analyze and to determine the most appropriate way of addressing autonomous ships operations. So the analysis will identify the need for or equivalences as provided for by instruments, or maybe amending existing, or maybe developing new instruments, or none of all as a result of the analysis, of course. According to IMO, the aim is complete regulatory scoping exercise this year, so we will have to wait for a while to see final results of this analysis. Finally, the most interesting part is probably the list of instruments to be covered in IMO's regulatory scoping exercise for autonomous ships. That list is really long. First of all, the list of instruments for which is responsible Maritime Safety Committee includes those instruments which covers first of all safety, then collision. For example, in the same session we will have two presentations in the topic autonomous ships and collisions. Plus one will be from Italian perspective. Then the list of instruments to be covered also includes loading and stability, then training of seafarers and fishers, then search and rescue, tonnage, special trade passenger ships. So this is part of Maritime Safety Committee responsibility. Then the list of instruments to be covered in the legal committee scoping exercise includes, as I said, a huge list of, long list of instruments. At the top, you can notice there is an international convention on civil liability for bunker oil pollution damage, and then CLC convention and its protocol. Also, I have to point out that in this session, we will also have a presentation in the subject of autonomous ships and civil liability issues. Also, the list of instruments include an nuclear convention, then Athens Convention and its protocol, then conventions on limitation of liability for maritime claims and its protocol, then convention for the suppression of unlawful acts against the safety of maritime navigation and its protocol, then International Convention on Salvage, Nairobi Convention, and finally at the end, HNS protocol. Also, facilitation committee is considering convention on facilitation of international maritime traffic. And also you can see here, there are also some conventions which will be part of regulatory scoping exercise and analysis. And some of these conventions are not just IMO responsible, but IMO and some other United Nations body, for example, the International Convention on Maritime Liens and Mortgages or International Convention on Arrest of the Ships. Just to point out here that supporting the discussion on the IMO and also CMI through its international working group on unmanned ship is also engaged with the autonomous space. And we cannot forget the law of the sea as well. The law of the sea is also on the list of conventions to be taken into account for the purpose of use of autonomous ships. The law of the sea is regulated by United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and this convention was prompted by desire to settle all issues relating to law of the sea, but yet does not have provisions referring to autonomous ships. And at the end, just few examples of national legal regulations. So we will see some recent changes in national legislation for autonomous shipping in some maritime countries. First one is Finland. 2 years ago, they changed their Act on Ships, Crews and Safety Management of Ships. And according to same act, it is possible to grant exceptions from minimum vessel manning requirements and watchkeeping for testing purposes. Also, according to this act, the manning of ships can be reduced in automatization tests. So Act on Ships, Crews and the safety management of ships definitely promotes testing of new technologies. A world leader in maritime autonomy is definitely Norway. Norway has already adopted maritime law to use of autonomous ships, and it has made changes in maritime code. So in Norway, it's already possible to conduct autonomous trails in test area established by Norwegian maritime authorities. Also, some countries change or they are considering to change their legal framework for autonomous shipping, such as United Kingdom, Sweden, then Portugal, Japan, Denmark as well. So briefly at the end, just to summarize the above. So in the last years, autonomous shipping has turned to one of the main regulatory topics, but as you can see, discussion is still on. So definitely IMO conventions, IMO instruments, and the law of the sea are crucial for autonomy, especially for international autonomous trade. IMO and the law of the sea will play, and they play, the most important role. So some countries, some states have made the first changes in their national regulations to use of this new generation of the ships. So that's the reason we will continue to follow achievements on international as well as on national level in the subject of legal regulation to use of autonomous ships. I have to say that this is complex process and it's huge legal challenge, definitely, and it takes time and it needs time. Thank you very much for your kind attention.